Doom the Dark Ages was always going to have a tough challenge ahead of it. After the twin lightning bolts of Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal both took the notion of high-octane slaughter as far as it could go, it wasn't entirely clear what another sequel, or in this case prequel, could actually bring to the table. Now the attempt to fix what ain't broke has brought us the Dark Ages. An uncertain follow-up that's at its best when it just feels like you're playing Eternal again, and at its worst when it's selling you unwieldy new mechanics. No wonder the overloaded Slayer seems more tired than angry by the time the closing credits roll. After Doom Eternal, the ancient gods ended up with the Doom Slayer beating both God and Satan to death. I wasn't entirely sure how the stakes could be raised. The developers skipped that issue by going back to a prequel set prior to the events of Doom 2016, that previously alluded to period after the Slayer has ended up on Argent d'Honneur, and become their ultimate attack dog in the ongoing war against the demons of hell. But the uneasy alliance with the angelic makers has resulted in Heaven demanding that the feral Doom guy be fitted with various mind control devices to keep him in check. Never fear though, the game is eagerly teasing him bursting out of these chains from the moment they're introduced. So what motivation does Doom the Dark Ages have to offer? Well, going sightseeing through a series of heavy metal album covers is always fun. There's a level spent inside the carcass of a giant that comes to mind, with some appealing grisly optics when you pause to take in the scenery between massacres. And while levels on Argent d'Honneur are generally less interesting, those set in Hell and on the home turf of the old gods are more intriguing on the eye, even if the layouts make less sense than ever in an attempt to hide collectibles. More broadly, the aesthetics of a cyborg dragon with laser wings fighting demons on skull ships against a burning sky will always be entertaining on some level. There's too much gnarly flamboyance hard-coded into the DNA of modern Doom for it to ever truly be boring. A new franchise entry must offer new ideas, and so Doom the Dark Ages has a focus on melee combat, downplaying the verticality of the previous games that allowed you to leapfrog foes and spring around arenas, instead introducing a shield and parry mechanics with several melee weapons. You regain melee charges by parrying attacks, while using your chainsaw shield to close distances and occasionally throwing it to clear crowds. It's interesting as concepts go, and though I like the shield when I'm going full Steve Rogers on a horde of Draugr, it's when I'm playing protracted games of patty cake with tougher enemies that things get boring. Parry, smack. Parry, smack. Even glory kills have been tossed out, which doesn't help with the Doom guy's apparent loss of moxie. Now he can't even be bothered to beat a demon to death with its own leg anymore. Some may appreciate the greater focus on close quarters, but those who enjoyed the springiness of prior entries will inevitably find themselves nostalgic for the dusty wastelands of Mars and the simple joys of the double jump. Still, things got better when I abandoned brawling as a rule and just invested in the gunplay, which is as punchy as ever, partly due to a couple of standouts in the arsenal. A weapon that shreds skulls and fires the resultant bone shrapnel is worthy of celebration, and if anything from the Dark Ages deserves to survive into future games, I'd be happy for the throwable shield to be a mainstay, which is always fun to watch slice through crowds before soaring back. I also don't object to the new bullet hell elements, which push you to keep at a fast pace, rapidly dodging projectiles before leaping in to vaporize a revenant with a spray of buckshot. Doom the Dark Ages is a whole lot less funny than previous Doom games were. The Slayer furiously smashing his way through every problem to the exasperation of his quest givers made him rightly beloved in the previous games, as well as having the soul of a 13-year-old boy whose bedroom is littered with comic books and electric guitars. Here, he feels much more like a blank slate, usually just following the instructions of the Sentinels without any discernible feeling behind the mask. Despite plenty of areas featuring regular soldiers and citizens, the Slayer's larger-than-life presence never really plays a factor. There's nothing quite like Doom 2016's intercom destruction or Doom Eternal's keycard section. Only a single late-game gag involving a gatekeeper comes close, but even that feels tamped down. A welcome laugh in a narrative that otherwise presents Doom Guy at his blandest in years. The characteristic rage that defines the character is rarely seen or felt. The other gimmicks Doom the Dark Ages introduces are reoccurring vehicle sequences spent piloting either the aforementioned Cyber Dragon or a skyscraper-sized Atlan mech. These are things that will obviously look impressive in trailers, but I quickly realised that both were experiences to be more endured than savoured. The dragon levels are particularly stiff, made all the clunkier by a weird obsession with timed dodges and a lock-on system that ironically locks you in place. Meanwhile, giant mechs remain the riddle that video games are still unable to solve, as the Pacific Rim fantasy inevitably shatters when you remember it's not very fun to pilot something that moves like a glacier. Oh, and there's also some stationary turret sequences that are barely worth mentioning, mindlessly firing into a crowd that poses no threat to you whatsoever. All these divergences from the core gameplay are usually fairly brief, so they don't offend too drastically, but it's a shame that the best thing I have to say about them is that they're mercifully infrequent. Let's be clear about this. Is Doom the Dark Ages better than the Doom 2016 reboot? No. Is it better than Doom Eternal? No. Is it still a decent game on its own terms? Yes, just about. But that's mostly due to what elements were carried forward from previous entries rather than what's unique about this one. Yet every moment of triumphant action is thrown off when you come up against Doom the Dark Ages innovations, which are largely well-intentioned misfires. Clattering about in a giant mech that refuses to get out of first gear, or a cutscene wherein two piles of scar tissue and armour grunt about lore while Doomguy waits nearby for somebody to tell him to kill something. If you want more of the modern Doom experience, ultimately Doom the Dark Ages will oblige. Just understand that you're not getting the best that the Slayer has to offer. We give Doom the Dark Ages 3.5 stars out of 5. But what do you think? Will you be picking up Doom the Dark Ages? Let us know in the comments, and stick with GamesRadar for the latest reviews, previews, and more.